There are many out there who think that they have the one perfect idea that is just going to make a game so much better. But in reality, most of us look at it and go, that is a terrible idea. Which brings us to a Reddit thread. Reddit user Apex Raider made a post in the Genshin Impact subreddit titled "Bad Suggestions That Would Actually Make the Game Worse." A topic that, while I've never actually made a video on it, I'm actually quite passionate about it because I see terrible suggestions all the time, but mostly two big ones: PvP and leaderboards in the Spiral Abyss. Two features that I don't think anyone really put any thought into if they actually want them in this game, or they happen to be a C6R5 everybody whale who would actually benefit from these features. So let's see what people have said in the thread first. One of the first ones that caught my eyes is 5-piece artifact sets. Now, I've never actually heard anybody ever say they would want this because it's pretty much just a net negative. We already know that in Honkai Star Rail, we have full artifact sets. There are no flex slots, and it does make gearing a little bit more difficult. Sometimes you get a really good piece for an artifact set that's just not really desirable, and then you just know it's junk because you can't use it on anybody, and the people who would actually use that set, if anybody, don't want it either. So it's just a dead piece that could otherwise be a really good off piece. Now, could you make this a good thing? Maybe you could actually make it so the 5-piece for an artifact set is just like almost a slightly weaker 2-piece bonus. So it's not like the end of the world if you don't get it, but if you do have 5 pieces, great, a little extra bonus. But if we had something as powerful as the 4 set on the 5 set, man, that would be miserable. But also, you know, it'd probably be worth it just not having a flex piece. Even though there are some potential upsides to having a 5th bonus on our artifact sets, or the bonus being pushed to that, maybe being buffed a little bit, in the case that you get something like a Husk Sands with attack on it, then it's just not really going to be useful. Whereas right now, you can at least use it as a potential off piece on another character. I think both ways have their benefits. Next up, are you serious? Who forced walking in cities? Are you insane? What kind of sick son of a bitch would ever want this for the entire player base? Dear God, if that's what you enjoy, you do you. You keep your way of enjoying games as far away from me as possible, because that would make me quit this game in an instant. Sure, we may still have characters like Yelan and Sayu that can forego that. Oh, but you know that this sick individual, they want those disabled in cities too, because it's not realistic to be using abilities in a city where it's supposed to be safe. We need a term for ideas like this, and I think a good term is toxic immersion. There's immersion breaking things everywhere in this game. You pretty much have to turn a blind eye to a lot of it to still think that this world is kind of realistic. And running around in town, that's probably the most realistic thing we do. Because I can tell you for sure, it ain't Beto doing this on sand in stilettos. It's not getting jumped on and slammed by a monster about 20 times our body weight and then eating like 5 whole chickens before getting full. And it sure as shit is not Beto doing this on sand in stiletto high heels. Next up is a post that reads, saw a post from someone overwhelmed with their amount of characters. They suggested to be able I can read, I promise. They suggested to be able to delete owned characters you don't want to use. When people brought up the danger of accounts being hacked, they said they didn't believe that being a thing. In retrospect, it sounds like a troll posting. Now, the thing is I genuinely believe that there may be those out there who actually want this feature. They either play something like a sword-only account or a polearm-only account, and they would actually prefer to delete characters that their account isn't supposed to use, or they just really hate a character like Diona and would actually just rather delete her off their roster. Completely understandable. However, the potential for griefing just makes this an absolutely terrible change. Now, even when your account gets compromised, it's pretty unlikely that they're going to delete your characters. More often than not, your account is going to be stolen by a service who wishes to resell your account as one of their own. And they don't want to delete characters off it because they want it to be as appealing as possible. But it's always possible that somebody malicious might get your account and just might wish to grief it. It's better for Hoyoverse, it's better for the player that this feature just not be a thing. There's really no reason to want to get rid of a character. The next user says, I would say small details like when large enemies, i.e. ruin guards or ruin drakes, die and fall over, these can damage you. It technically improves immersion, but it's annoying as hell. And yeah, I agree. This is another thing that I would almost call toxic immersion, but in reality, if it does a small amount of damage to you, it's not the end of the world. You know, you can heal it back, dodge it, absorb it with a Zhongli shield, and in some cases, it's probably going to create some funny clips in Spiral Abyss or something where you actually beat a chamber or you're close, but then someone dies to literally the enemy dying. It'd be kind of funny. I don't see it as being a big negative, but it is kind of a silly thing. Another terrible immersion-based suggestion. For more immersive gameplay, teleport waypoints will be removed. Yeah, because what person out there doesn't want to spend a half hour doing everybody's favorite activity, daily commission? Seriously, there is no benefit to this, immersion or otherwise. If your idea of being immersed is just wasting your time, go play the PS4. Those loading screens will give you a level of immersion that you never even thought possible. They'll also give you more than enough time to consider just how horrible of an idea you just had. Next up is something I already touched on in the beginning, but this user brought it up anyway. People asking for PvP like Credit Card Charlie wouldn't obliterate them with a 1.8 trillion Hu Tao burst. So for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to group this in with the idea of leaderboards as well, because both of them would be dominated by money. I don't care how much anime main character energy you think you have and that you can overcome all the money in the world with your skill. Hate to break it to you, that ain't gonna happen. You're not the main character here. The real main character here is whatever Kirito-ass motherfucker dual wields credit cards and whips out their mortgage on your ass. It really doesn't matter if it's PvP or it's PvE leaderboards in the Spiral Abyss. If you're an average player, you don't stand a chance. This feature would not be for you. Try to normalize artifacts, constellations, weapons, and literally every aspect of a character to try to make it fair? What about free-to-play players who just saved up for like a year for their C6 Ayaka? Well, rip bozo, I guess. Try to do it for the Spiral Abyss? You literally could not. You would have to change how the Spiral Abyss worked. What are you gonna do? Make a whole second Abyss that doesn't actually give you any rewards and everyone's using normalized preset teams made by HoYoverse so that you can compete on a leaderboard? I'm pretty sure anything would be worth the development time over that. Many people who have wanted this in the past are even people who are just looking for more avenues to use the characters that they took their time building. So I don't even think those people would necessarily want a normalized environment. But even if you stripped things down to no constellations and maybe just a 5-star weapon, well, you still have artifacts. Are you not aware of the fact that whales can refresh their resin up to 6 times a day, which gives them more than double the resin of a regular player, and they're paying $10 US a day to do that? I've always been particularly annoyed about these two requests because, well, the game's not built for it. Genshin Impact was not built for competition, nor do I think any gacha game really is. What's worse is we've had large content creators in the Genshin space that were really advocating for these features, and I was always worried that HoYoverse would listen to them because they are the giant whales who would benefit from this kind of stuff. I can sympathize with maybe wanting to do more things with the characters that you love and spend time building, but if you want a competitive PvP setting, this is not the kind of game for it. There are games in the past, a lot of old MMOs that tried to do this, they split their focus and they try to do both at the same time and they just end up failing at one miserably, usually the PvP. So if that's your interest, do yourself a favor. Pick up a dedicated PvP game. You'll enjoy it more, it's a lot more fair, it's more balanced, you'll have a all-around better time, and it just wouldn't be good if they spent their development time trying to make something like this happen. Okay, on to more fun suggestions. This user says 50 times more stamina, but it recovers 50 times slower. Hey, maybe with that much stamina, Xinyan could actually kill something in a single charge attack. Next up is one that I know many of you are going to have a very negative reaction to. This person says, can't think of many specific examples, but one I remember was somebody saying that all event activities should be combat, and to remove all of the exploration/parkour/puzzle games. Now, even for myself, whose favorite events happen to be combat events like the boss rush-like events, the dungeon crawlers, the more roguelike ones, even I don't want this changed, because even though most of my least favorite events have been ones like a Drink of Dreaming, the drink mixing one, or like the shopkeeping one we had not too long ago, or even a Honkai Star Rail, the museum event, even completely selfishly, I wouldn't want this, because there are still other non-combat events I like, and I understand that many players love those events more than the combat ones. There are many out there who are the total opposite of me. In fact, I usually feel like I'm in the minority of liking combat events more than the fluff ones with a lot of dialogue. You know, with the exception of any ones that Sino or Ito are in, because they're the best. The next user here says, yes, a lot of suggestions on this sub, in fact, are from players who don't really understand how to make a game work long term, and really only care about short-term enjoyment. And that may be reasonable from where they stand, but silly for developers to consider. And their actual response is, the worst I have seen that's common is asking to remove resin. Thank you, somebody else actually said this for once. Removing resin has got to be one of the most requested things that are honestly not well thought out. The negative impact this would have on the game would just be so bad. People would be quitting left, right, and center because they would be done with the game so fast. You would need to change fundamentally how domains work and honestly how fun they are to do to make this tolerable. If you can get artifacts unlimited times, artifact EXP is irrelevant. I mean, obviously you could do this with character building, talent books, everything too. There would just be nothing to work towards, and when an RPG has nothing to work towards, the game's done. Some people might like to play after that, but in my experiences, no, that's when people start to get bored. And even if you don't like the current drip feed of artifacts where you get like a small handful every day, it's a lot better than this alternative, I can promise you that. Maybe as an individual, a couple of you out there would actually prefer the other way, but I can promise you it's not healthy for the game, and no one wants to play a dead game because developers don't want to keep supporting a dead game. Next up, this user brings up the ability to trade characters and items between players. What I often see with this request is that you want to be able to trade artifacts, but also if you can trade characters and items, it's terrible. Let me tell you what you're asking for. You are asking for a future where the only way to play this game is to basically play on like 20 alt accounts at once. You're basically multiplying your resin by 20 times, you're getting more wishes, the game economy is dead, nobody is going to be spending money on the game anymore because the new meta is to play this game 24 hours a day. More and more games these days have been transitioning into a no trade economy where you have to find everything yourself. And it's honestly a lot more fulfilling, and I'm glad that games are moving to it because I much prefer it. And I would rather Genshin not introduce trading of any kind, whether it be for weapons, characters, resources, I don't care. I don't want anything to be tradable. Like at the bare minimum, maybe monster materials. That's about it. And even then, I don't really want that either. This user says maximum number of tries for the Abyss. Yeah, that would be rough. A lot of players would really suffer with that, and speedrunners, but I'm gonna be honest, they're in a prison of their own making in their own way. But you know, you do you, have fun. Not my thing. Definitely not in a game like this. Next up is user who says everyone who says older 5 stars should just be dumped into the standard banner. It would really be quite the mess. To make this a reality, getting the character you want would be hell. You would have to add something like an epitomized path to actually make this good. And with that, it could be a good suggestion to be honest, but you don't want too many characters to just feel like you can get them at any time because they still want the ability to rerun them. But it wouldn't hurt to maybe put some of the lesser reran characters or lesser desired ones in the standard. With some additional changes, has the potential to be a good idea, but on face value, it's just going to make people who already get angry over characters like Dia being added to standard and diluting the chances of getting a character they really want even more angry. The last one I'm going to talk about here, this user says the suggestion to remove exploration from the game and turn it into Honkai Impact 3rd with only focus on combat. Now I'm going to expand on this with a little bit of my own experiences. I see many people actually disliking the exploration aspect of Genshin Impact, either opting to do bare minimum exploration, leaving some zones as explored as little as like 30-40%, saying they don't like exploration, and many more people saying they don't like Oculus, or saying that they don't like features like the Sakura tree or the Frost-bearing tree from Dragonspine, things like that. You know, the things that actually heavily reward you for exploration. I like these things. Now, things like Oculus farming could be a little bit less painful sometimes. Maybe don't put them like freaking 100 feet up in the sky where you have to glide over for like a mile to get it, stuff like that. That can be kind of annoying. But ultimately, the exploration is what drew me and many other players to this game. It's what we love. It's an open world game with a heavy emphasis on exploration. If anything, I want them to add more features like that, expand on it even more. So I think it's a little bit weird when people just want less. It's almost like they're playing Smash Bros. And they're like, oh, seriously, another character? When are they going to stop adding characters? Like, who actually wants that or thinks that's good for the game? There were many more suggestions in this thread that were either like too long to explain in a short video like this, or could just have a video dedicated to the idea itself. Even some that could be good ideas with the right implementation. But that's where I'm going to leave it today. So thank you to you for watching. Thank you to my members, my patrons for supporting me as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Attaboy!